Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, blessed are you, for the Spirit of God rests upon you. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there's enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build but did not have the resources to finish." Or what king marching into battle will not first sit down and decide whether with 10,000 troops he can successfully oppose another king, advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of the Lord. One of the questions that has been very common in the early days of Christianity, and then also recently, ever since the time of the Protestant Reformation, is what is the relation of the laws of the New Covenant to the laws of the Old Covenant? One of the things that the early Christians were asking is, why did God allow so many sinful things to happen in the Old Testament and seemingly not rebuke so many of his people? Like, for example, so many of the patriarchs who had multiple wives, Abraham and Jacob and others. Why did God not explicitly rebuke those in the Scriptures? If you read the Scriptures carefully, you can see that God actually implicitly did rebuke them for their actions. But more importantly, one of the things that came up from a man named St. Irenaeus, which I've always thought was really insightful in terms of this question, is he said that God had to progressively reveal himself, and God was treating his people as a good father. So early on in salvation history, when his people was like a child, he could not give them all of the laws at once. He had to progressively reveal his ways to them, just as you do with a child. Right? When a child starts off playing baseball, you don't start with the infield fly rule. Right? You first teach him how to swing the bat, how to throw the ball. Right? And so God had to do the same thing with his people, gradually revealing himself and his laws, which I've always thought was very insightful. The other question that has come up more recently, again, with this relation, is how do the New Testament laws relate to the Old Testament laws? It is kind of common, ever since the Protestant Reformation, following in the spirit of Martin Luther, to think that the law really had no purpose in the Old Covenant. Some people will say that the only purpose of all of those laws of the Old Testament was to show God's people how prideful and inadequate they were in fulfilling the law. We as Catholics, we don't quite take that perspective. We say that the law was good in and of itself, but it was insufficient and it was incomplete. So many of the laws of the Old Covenant were there because of the hardness of the people's heart. But in the New Covenant, we no longer need laws written on tablets of stone to instruct us. God gives us his own law written onto our hearts. It's what happens at the Feast of Pentecost. The Feast of Pentecost in the Old Testament recalled the giving of the laws at Mount Sinai. And we read in the book of Acts that at the Feast of Pentecost, the law cut the people to their heart, and their hearts became like hearts of flesh. The law is no longer needed on tablets of stone. Another way you might say it, in the words of St. Paul, writing on this to the letter to the Romans, specifically discussing this controversy between Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians, And whether or not those Gentile Christians needed to keep all of those laws of the Old Covenant, St. Paul simply says, love is the fulfillment of the law. Hence, where there is love, there is no need of laws. And therefore, so many of those ritualistic laws of the Old Testament are no longer necessary, because love is what fulfills the law. Again, just as you would do with a child. As a child is growing, you have to give them many rules and a structure. But as they are older, you give them more and more freedom. And you simply entrust them to love you back. That's what St. Paul is saying here in the letter to the Romans.